Hey, Scott, what time's that 2 o'clock show start?
About 2:04.
All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is great to be here. It is Scott Squared and featuring our back to school show. I'm half of Scott Squared. I'm Scott the Steamroller Steehn, handicapper over here at winnersandwhiners.com. And I am joined by the one, the only, my buddy, the best friend I know named Scott. It is Scott Reichel. What's happening, my friend?
It's the best friend that you've had that you've never met in person. It feels
That's
pretty good.
Right.
Can't complain. Looking forward to week 2 or week 2.5, however you want to phrase it, of the college football season.
Whatever.
Week 0, I know you're not a fan of the name, but it is kind of catchy. But either way, point is, should be fun. Decent amount of competitive games, at least on the card, and hopefully we pick the right side of them.
Absolutely. We have a fresh farm ready to go for you guys after we have a sad tale of woe to talk about last week's farm, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Scott, any just real quick thoughts on the NFL game last night, the opener?
Never in doubt. Chiefs -3.
No sweat. And
man. Apparently Mark Andrews is stuck in quicksand. So
yeah, that was not, what do you have? 2 catches and he fell down on one of them?
2 catches for 14 yards, and he had 1 catch on like 3rd and short, and he got basically a yard because he fell down.
That hurt. So, all right. Well, onward and upward we go. The takeaway from that game, Isaiah Likely has too big of feet.
Yeah, a little bit. Durant syndrome.
All right, so let's fire this up. We're hoping that our screens are going to match the game we're talking about. So we'll see what happens. We know this first one's right, so let's get to it, Scott. It is the 3rd-ranked Texas Longhorns going up against the 10th-ranked Michigan Wolverines. Scott, can you tell me why this is an early game? What are we doing here?
I feel like they always try to have one marquee game that's early in the day, and I guess this was it. But this really just screams late night type of, ABC game. But
prime time, baby. What are we doing?
My guess is Fox had the rights, and they're like, all right, we want Michigan and Texas.
Now they probably have to show those replays of Bones at night or whatever. But, this is a Texas team favored by 6.5 points on the road, going to the Big House. Scott, when was the last time you think Michigan was a 6.5 point dog at the Big House? Any idea?
No clue.
Probably been a while.
I'm assuming maybe, I don't know, Rich Rod was there?
Probably.
Brady Hoke? I don't know. Probably a couple coaches ago.
Yeah, if you're wondering why we didn't look that up, you're thinking of a show that has a crack research department. That is not us. So, yeah, 6.5 point favorites. 44.5 is the number here. This is a Michigan team that I just they played with their food way too long against Fresno State. Scott, that was 16-10 in the 4th quarter. They played Warren over Orgy. Great name there. But the thought is maybe they kept a lot of stuff under wraps against the Bulldogs to pull it out for this game. Michigan absolutely shut down that Fresno State running game while everything worked for Texas. Texas really did no wrong in that game. They just absolutely blasted them. I think 6.5 is a little bit of an overreaction. Scott, I hate to say it, I'm going to have to take Michigan in the Big House getting points. You just don't get to do that very often, and I'm going to do it right here. What do you got?
No, I get it. I think it's 6.5, though I'm going to lean to Texas. It's mostly just based on Michigan choosing a walk-on to be their starting quarterback for the season, and he was not very good against Fresno, 15-25. So I'm not sold on Warren. He had 118 yards, sure. Mullings led them in rushing, 15 carries, 92. Point is, you're just looking at this offense, and they really didn't do much of most of the game. Ended up scoring 17 in the 4th quarter. Of course, Fresno was trying to play catch-up. They had the pick 6 on the goal line, actually. So that was definitely helpful to Michigan and made the game look a bit more comfortable than it actually was. But, that game was ugly. There's really no way around it. It was a 6-point game with less than 6 minutes left in the 4th quarter. The Michigan scored, and then they had pick 6 touchdown. So I didn't. They looked very good. I like Fresno plus the points. That worked out pretty well. I like the under. That worked out well, too. Texas dominated Colorado State, but that's kind of expected. I'll go with Texas. I just think they have more offensive firepower. I feel like Michigan is pretty vanilla offensively, at least for what I saw in that game against Fresno. They couldn't move the ball at home against Fresno. Probably not a good sign. I'll take Texas.
All right, that's fair. And a note to you guys out there, I had this game earlier in the week when I was capping this. I had it at 44.5. As you see, that number has come down 2 points. Expecting a defensive circle there down to 42.5. Scott, we got a comment in the comment section, and Marcy wants to know what happened to the round table of handicappers with Rusty. I think she means Rocky. But she says, I miss that guy in the skits. We had a lot of fun doing that, but it was kind of a one and done. As I think for whatever reason they were expecting more views, although we were getting 8,000 to 10,000 views per show. But yeah, we've kind of, I guess, as they say in corporate parlance, Scott, they've decided to go a different direction. So
Yeah,
Mark,
it happens.
thanks so much for digging it. We had a blast doing it. It's probably the most fun football season I've had in a while. And yeah, our RIP to our show there. All right, moving on, Scotty. Let's take a look at the Happy Valley as Penn State entertains the Bowling Green Falcons. 34 and the hook is your number there. And 49.5, that's a number that's actually gone up 1 point this week, is the total. Your feelings about this contest, buddy?
So both teams won comfortably in the first game. I know Penn State was supposed to get challenged by West Virginia. That did not happen, as the only, I'd say, delay was the weather, because the actual result was never in doubt.
Do you and I both have? Did you and I both have the Mountaineers there, or was that just me? I don't know.
No, we both leaned West Virginia there. We thought in Morgantown it might get a bit weird. Penn State, though, looked very comfortable for most of the game. It's pretty interesting, though, because 34 is pretty massive, and I think Bowling Green is going to be a good team in the MAC, but the MAC teams usually get smacked. Shout out to Akron, though. They covered against Ohio State, so I guess there's that. But for this one, I think I'm going to actually take the points. I just think that this is a few too many. I think that Penn State, yes, they have Kent State on deck. There is no look-ahead spot. I think Bowling Green's decent. I think the question is, can Penn State, or will they run up the score? They might, and if they win this game by 40, I'll live with it. But I don't think Bowling Green's that bad, so I'll take the 35.
I got to tell you, this is probably my least favorite week to handicap college football, because you have a lot of mismatches. You have a lot of look-ahead spots where the conference season starts next week for some of these teams, a lot of big games. So I despise, you're going to see a lot of huge numbers here.
I'm not betting the 35, but I would lean to the points.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna go the other way, and it's mainly due to the fact of how well this Penn State defense was able to defend against the rush of West Virginia. They got just 85 yards on 37 carries. That's 2.3 yards per carry. This Bowling Green team, they ran wild against Fordham, averaging 9.1 yards per carry. Scott, I don't think they're going to average 9.1 yards per carry against Penn State. Penn State is going to dare Connor Beaslak to beat him, or Bazelak rather. Guess what, Scott? He ain't going to do it. And more importantly for us, I don't think he covers the number. This Penn State team beat West Virginia by 24 in Morgantown. This one won't be nearly as close. I like the hook there. I'm getting the hook in my direction. I'll take Penn State to cover the points. Man, we're out of the box strong, brother. 2 games, 2 disagreements.
It might honestly be the total for me. Since the total's already pretty cheap, I just feel like you're kind of trying to find some pretty difficult middle ground there, where you're trying to expect one team to do a bunch of scoring, other team does nothing, and Penn State wins like 42-0. But when the total's that low and the spread's that big, it's pretty tough to find the exact script to get both.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You're putting Bowling Green somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 9 points as far as a team total goes. And yeah, there's just too many funky things happen. You know, red zone turnovers, pick sixes, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's see if I got the right one. What you got?
I see Arkansas and Oklahoma State.
There you go. How about that? Arkansas traveling to Stillwater, take on OK State. Oklahoma State minus 7.5, 62.5 is the number. Is that still what we have here? Oh my goodness, that has gone to 10. 10, Scott. Okay, let's talk about that one. See, that's what happens when you start this on Tuesday. Scott, Oklahoma State supposed to be about Ollie Gordon, Heisman candidate, runner extraordinaire, et cetera, et cetera. He did not have a great game against the Jacks last week. Ran the ball 27 times for 104 yards. Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns. He added another one by the air. But if you're averaging 3.9 yards per carry against an FCS team, could there be a little problem there? Oklahoma State, for them, it's always about that defense and why they don't have one. They're supposed to get better this year. The second year of Brian Nardo's scheme. We haven't seen it on the field yet. This is a team that was 114th in yards per play last year, and they were absolutely gashed by explosive plays. They were bottom 15 in the country in explosive run and explosive pass plays. As far as the Arkansas side goes, is Taylor Green the real deal, Scott? Or is
I
it?
mean, ultimate Boise. He's definitely dynamic. We'll put it that way. But Pine Bluff might be really bad because I don't care what division you're in or FCS, FBS. 70-0 is just you probably shouldn't have shown up to the actual stadium.
That's a spanking right there. I hope the check cleared. Green was 16 to 23, 229, 88 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns total. But what I do like about this Razorbacks team is the defensive line, and they have one of their best defensive backs in Jalen Braxton coming back, one of the best defensive backs in the country for my money. Pass defense was 28th last year. Rush defense was 84th. And this team gave up 130 yards to Pine Bluff in the opener. Scott, I liked it at 7.5. I liked it even better at 10. Give me the Hogs, man. Let's go.
Yeah, by the way, just to correct you earlier, Gordon did have one extra carry there that he kind of broke. So he finished with 28 carries for 126.
Oh.
So he averaged 4.5 with 3 touchdowns. Still, you'd expect a bit of a better effort. But I think you're not wrong. I mean, I like Oklahoma State to cover in that first game. And Bowman was actually very good. 245 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the defense did give up 264 passing yards to Gronowski. Griffin Wild had 150 yards. So defensively, there might have been a couple of holes there to exploit. And you're looking at the actual yards. Oklahoma State only had 6 more yards of offense in the entire game. So I thought South Dakota State moved it pretty well. I like Arkansas. I think Arkansas can keep this game close. You know, it just means more in the SEC, whatever that means. But point is, I think 10's too many. We know Oklahoma State tends to have one slip up out of conference. It is a big, high-profile game, though, because it is going to be against an SEC team. But still, I think Arkansas is kind of being underrated here. I think that even though Pine Bluff's not very good, they had a great showing. The offense looked good, and I think the defense can at least provide some resistance. But I think that at the end of the day, if they can stop Gordon and maybe Bowman throws a pick or two, I think Arkansas has a shot to win the game. So I'll go with Arkansas to lose this by 1 possession.
Does that line move worry you at all? 2.5 points in 4 days?
It could, but I feel like some people might be overreacting to how badly the score suggests that Oklahoma State dominated against South Dakota State. When in reality, once again, they only had 6 more yards. I feel like Oklahoma State was good. They scored 44 points. But I feel like Arkansas, once again, is better, obviously, than South Dakota State. No offense to the Jacks. I think that they show up for this one. Give me Arkansas.
All right. I got K-State Tulane next. Is that what you got?
Yep.
All right. Let's rock. This Kansas State team is a 9.5-point road favorite, ranked 17th in the country, by the way, as they head down to Nolens to take on the Tulane Green Wave. 48.5 is the total. What do you have here, buddy?
So I want to ask you your thoughts about the first game because Kansas State beat UT Martin. That was never in doubt. RIP Johnson's Heisman case because that wasn't a great start to the season. But I do want to ask you what your thoughts were on Kansas State because they expected the coast. They did. Did I think they looked that great offensively? Not in the beginning. They kind of got going as the game went on, but I kind of was expecting a bit more from them offensively. Tulane, we know that they were going through a pretty decent change there with, of course, Pratt no longer being there. We thought they might take a step back. Kansas State does have Arizona on deck, and I do want to ask if you think there's a look-at spot there. Maybe. Tulane dominated in the first game against an FCS team that really means nothing to me. But Kansas State and Oklahoma back-to-back, ouch. I think I'll go with Kansas State here. I feel like the offense really could have clicked a lot more than it actually did. They scored 41 in the end, but I think you'd agree with it. Johnson didn't look amazing.
No.
I think he'll look better in future weeks, but there is some sense of motivation that Kansas State can put together a much better offensive effort. I'm sure the coaching staff wasn't thrilled by how they started that game offensively. I'll go with Kansas State. I think there's actually an incentive there to put together a better effort after kind of just not looking that sharp against an FCS team in week 1. I think Kansas State brings it. I think Tulane still has some problems long term. Kansas State's, of course, better at basically every position. Give me Kansas State.
All right. Yeah. As far as Avery Johnson goes, you're right, Scott. He looked like a great running quarterback, but he did not.
The throwing wasn't that great.
Yeah. He did not have the accuracy that we expected, especially in the more he tried downfield throws, the kind of the worse it went. Defense looks good. I would certainly probably lean to the under in this game. But this is a line move that's gone in favor of the Cats. They opened as an 8-point favorite, already moved to 9.5. Kansas State's record since the start of last year is a 9.5-point favorite or better, 4-3. Tulane, we saw them really take a step forward here in the last couple seasons under Willie Fritz. But of course, Willie Fritz is now at Houston. They got Joe Summerall Summerall was great at Troy, went 23-5 over his 2 seasons there. But you know what? One of those losses was a 42-13 blowout at the hands of who? K-State last year. That's right. The weird thing for me, Scott, was he went with the freshman quarterback in Devin Mensa over the guy that had been on the squad for a while, Kai Horton, in the transfer they brought in, Ty Thompson. Mensa looked decent, went 10 for 12, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. Both these teams obviously stepping up in class from last year. Scott, I'm leaning towards Tulane, but I'll tell you what worries me. I worry about there's a little bit of a revenge factor for K-State because this is a Tulane team that came into Manhattan 2 years ago and upset the Cats 17-10. So I don't think, as far as a look ahead goes, I think that's going to be able to keep that look ahead vibe down to a minimum. That was Kleinman's team. He knows his Tulane team is nothing to be taken lightly. Scott, I think the home field makes the difference here. I think K-State gets the win, but I'm going to lean Tulane and the 9.5. And if we can get that to 10, I'll be even happier.
Yeah, I think Kansas State, once again, assuming Johnson is a little bit sharper in the pocket in general with his passes. The defense I still liked a lot from Kansas State. I think it's a good unit overall. So, yeah, I think Kansas State, I think it's going to be in the balance, but give me Kansas State by like 13.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. It could come down to 1 or 2 plays and make it go either way. So I have,
just give me like a 27-14 type game, something like that.
All right, Scott. How about the battle of the Hawkeye State? There, as Iowa State travels to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes 2.5-point favorites. Is that nope? It's gone to 3, and the total has stayed. It opened at 37.5, and people said you're drunk, and that immediately went down to 35.5 by the time us plebes got a hand on it. What do you think? Or just no? This is me. Sorry. Scott, there's only one play here. I don't even know why we're talking about it. It's the under. It's the under. If you're looking for reasons on the side, how about this? Matt Campbell has had success with Iowa State, but man, he has done nothing against Iowa. He is 1-6 in lifetime against the Hawkeyes. The Cyclones, they did not have much success running the ball against North Dakota. By the way, that's North Dakota, not North Dakota State. And now they get to face this Iowa defense that gave up just 1.7 yards per carry against Illinois State. I don't see how Iowa State gets much going on the ground here at all. If you want to turn Iowa State one-dimensional and let Iowa just pin back their ears and rush the passer, good luck with that. This is a Hawkeyes team that absolutely plays killer defense. And the amazing part is, Scott, the offense, as we know, was terrible. They were 102nd in time of possession last year. So that means teams are getting like an extra series or 2 to try to put more points on the board, and they still can't do it. Give me the under. I made this pick in my sleep last night.
Yeah, I'm with you. Iowa did end up winning the first game 40-0. Shout out to the under, by the way, that got there. Anyway.
Never a doubt.
Point is, though, I am going to go with the under again in this game with you, but I also do like Iowa in this game in general. We mentioned it in the conference preview. Iowa State last year couldn't run the ball either. Nothing's really changed. They're pretty one-dimensional. Now, Becht, if he finds a way to torch the secondary, I'll be happy for him. I don't see it happening, but the point is I do think that Iowa State being one-dimensional is probably not going to help in this matchup against an elite defense on the road. But I think you're looking at a spot where Iowa did end up scoring 40. It was 6-0 at the half.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to forget that. They've kind of poured it on late, and they got the offense going a bit, but Iowa State we know is a lot better than Illinois State. And North Dakota, I don't know how good they're supposed to be, but the defense actually held Iowa State's offense in check. So probably not a good sign for the Hawkeyes in this game. If you wanted a score prediction, give me like 20-10, but I'll go Iowa on the under.
Okay. All right. Very good.
You have a score prediction? Do you think Iowa State even gets to 10?
No, I don't think they get.
I think there might be a BS turnover at like their own 30, and Iowa State takes over.
Fair. All right.
Maybe.
I'm thinking more 21-7, 24-7, something along those lines.
Same idea.
All right. So let's talk about Tennessee Tech at Georgia, Scott. This is and I don't think we have a slide for this one.
We didn't
even do a slide for this one. This one opened up at 53.5. Do I still have it at 53.5? I don't even know. I've seen it go to 54.5. And Scott, do you think it matters?
It might. I mean, if you're
you never know, man.
You never know. I mean, that is a lot of points.
What do you got here, buddy?
Well, Georgia, I don't want to compare it to Iowa, but you can argue that based on how the script went for week one, it was kind of the same. Like both offenses did nothing for the entire half, but the defense was incredible, so it didn't matter. And the second half came around and they just buried the other team. Now,
Yep.
on one hand, Iowa was against an FCS team and Georgia was against Clemson. But you get my point. The point is
Right.
the offense took a while to get going, and then once it did, the game was already over at that point. Klubnik never stood a chance, and Georgia can kind of name the score they want in this game. However, looking at the last couple of years, they really don't do a great job of fully murdering these FCS teams. Played UT Martin last year. They won 48-7. That's fine. Ball State was an FBS team, but not a good one. They won 45-3. If you want to go back to the year prior, they played Samford, won 33-0. Year before that, they played, they didn't play an FCS team. They played Charleston Southern late in the year. They won that game by 49. I'm going to take the points. I feel like, historically speaking, Georgia's not really going out of their way to fully embarrass this team and beat Pine Bluff by 70. They tend to be a team that kind of wins by 40. They'll pull everybody. They'll run the ball. Kirby doesn't care. I'll take the points. Historically speaking, it's not the same exact thing as Bama with Saban, who was so good at not covering these massive numbers against FCS teams. Kind of the same boat. Maybe it's because Smart used to actually be under Saban. Point is, there's no incentive to run it up. I don't see them running it up. Give me Georgia to win this game by 40 and change, but not by 50 and change. I'll take the points.
Yeah, you did forget to mention one part of your equation there. They have covered a couple of 50 point. They have won by more than 50 a couple times in the last couple of years. Scott, who was it against?
I don't believe it was against an FCS team.
No, it was against Vandy.
It was against Vandy, yeah.
I think they won 55-0 and 57-0.
But even with that, 55-0, it tells you the offense did take their foot off the gas late because they probably could have scored 70 if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think you got it absolutely right with Kirby Smart. I think this is the guy. Once conference season starts, no quarter asked, no quarter given.
Except Missouri.
You want to play in the SEC? We're going to treat you like you're a big boy. But these FCS teams that are coming in for a paycheck, I do think he takes his foot off the gas. And we always talk about this before, Scott, in our other shows. When you're at home, you're dressing more guys. You can play further down the depth chart. You can play those 4s and 5s.
Some walk-ons will get on there late.
Right. You're right. Exactly. The guys that aren't traveling to Alabama or whatever, they're gonna be on the bench at home. I'm kind of with you. The only note I had on this was I'm tired of getting burned by shitty schools because I overrated a lot of FCS schools last year that were good FCS schools that didn't do anything against Division I or FBS competition. Sorry, I'm old. Yeah, I'm with you. Give me the 53.5. I'll get okey doked there with you, buddy.
It's just a historical trend. I mean, we used to fade Bama every year when they were laying these massive numbers. It usually came through.
Yep.
Because they just stopped caring. I feel the same story here. Georgia might be up 35-0 at the half, and then you live bet the under, and you're just going to see a bunch of punts.
Yeah.
Kind of how it goes. But Georgia, though, if they really wanted to, could win this game by 70. I just don't think they care enough. And they have Kentucky on deck on the road.
Yeah, and some of these you're going to find we have stronger opinions than others, especially when you get up into the 40 and 50 ranges, laying the spread. There's too many things that can go wonky, Scott. You've almost got to score every possession.
Pretty much.
If you punt more than once, you're probably not covering 53.5.
I think my main philosophy when it comes to like laying massive numbers or taking points involves the coach's philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why I liked Ole Miss against Furman because I just expected Lane Kiffin to try to run it up and embarrass the other team. I don't think Smart cares enough. But the fact is they do have Kentucky on the road on deck. I'm not saying Kentucky's a threat to beat them. It is a road game. It's first conference game. There's no incentive.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about, you get a coach like Lane Kiffin and a team like Ole Miss, they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove that they belong in the upper echelon of the SEC talk. And Georgia, they got nothing to prove to anybody.
No.
Kirby Smart doesn't need to run up the score like Lane Kiffin does. I think you've absolutely hit something there. Let's take a look at the Huskies and Irish, Scott, as Northern Illinois travels to South Bend to take on the Golden Domers. Notre Dame ranked 5th. 27.5 is your number here. 45.5 is the total. Mr. Reichel, I believe this is a bad matchup for the Huskies, and not just for the obvious reasons, because they're Northern Illinois and the other team is Notre Dame, but their strengths and weaknesses match up really, really poorly with the strengths and weaknesses of this Notre Dame team. Northern Illinois, they can't run the ball, and they can't stop the run. Two things that Notre Dame excels at is stopping the run and running the football to themselves. or themselves rather. There's been a little bit of Northern Illinois money come in, and it's music to my ears as we've got it below 28. I think that half point could matter. Taking Notre Dame to cover the big number, Scott. Give me the Domers minus 27.5.
I'm really on the fence on this one because I don't know what to think of Notre Dame's offense. I get the argument is they're going to run the ball down this team's throat. That I can agree with. Hampton was great in the first game. It was against an FCS team, but he was now 18 of 20 for 328 yards. I don't see that happening again in this game. I think I'm going to go with the under in this one. I'll go with the total instead because I think it actually can get there based on your script. Notre Dame's going to run the ball.
Yep.
Like Leonard didn't do anything against Texas A&M, and it didn't matter. Now, you could argue that they're going to try to get him going, but if Notre Dame's going to try to run the ball, drain a bunch of clock, move the chains, and Northern Illinois can't really do anything about it, aren't they just going to milk a bunch of clock, especially in the second half? Like, I think Northern Illinois, they tend to be a bit dangerous against some other teams, not teams that are like as good as Notre Dame is. They can sneak up on like a Boston College or somebody. I think we saw that last year. But I think for the sake of this matchup, 28, I think, is about right for a Notre Dame team that offensively didn't really show much in the first game. The defense looked good, though. Wiegman was either in the wrong sport or he was in a bad matchup because he looked awful for the entire game. Give me the under. I think Notre Dame could win this game like potentially 31-3. Like, I think that's possible, but based on how much running clock should be in this game, I think I'm going to go with the under. Give me Notre Dame to win this one. If I had to actually guess a score, 34-10. So I guess I'm actually going Northern Illinois to cover. But Notre Dame, they might be an under team because I'm not sure they're going to want to throw the ball this season.
Yeah, that's fair. And you bring up a good point with Northern Illinois. They're a running team by nature, but they're going to have to find out for themselves. And it's probably going to take at least a half of getting nothing for them to try to switch tactics.
They're going to run the ball into a brick wall for a half because that's what they've been doing for basically the last, 20 years?
Yep. And by the way, shout out to our producer Bob for the fat finger in the A instead of the S on the Araya. And another note, 27.5 is available today at a lot of different spots. So there is that hook available if you want to bet the.
I do want to ask you though, because Notre Dame looked good in the first game. It was closer than the 10-point margin at the end. It was tied with a couple minutes to go. What do you think? We both liked Notre Dame to win. It was kind of the game I thought it was going to be. I didn't think Wiegman was any good, and the defense dominated. Did you like how Riley Leonard looked? Because I thought he looked pretty average.
Scott, I will be generous and call him still a work in progress. How about that?
Okay, because I believe he was rumored to be like a top 10 pick, and he came back for another year of college. That's probably not a good sign.
Not a good sign. He's gonna need to step up to get that top 10 status back.
Are we in like Jake Locker territory with him?
We could be a couple weeks away from that. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about Baylor and Utah moving to the Big 12. This is kind of a weird game, Scott. It's a conference game, but it wasn't supposed to be. They signed this deal like 10 years ago as an out-of-conference matchup, and they kept it in place even after Utah moved to the Big 12.
I'm sorry, did you say Utes?
Did you say Utes? We have the over-under on that joke, by the way, every show, 1.5.
Yeah.
At least one. Utah minus 14.5, as you see there on the board, and I've got the total at 55.5. Who's up near you?
I think it's me.
Okay. Hit it.
Both teams dominated against FCS teams in the first week. You saw Baylor beat Tarleton State 45-3. So Utah beat Southern Utah 49-0. I believe they covered that one. For this matchup, though, the line has actually dropped. I think it opened at 17. Now it's down to 14.5. Yeah, I'm just going to go with Rising in Utah. 10 of 15 with 5 touchdowns. Like, Rising was so damn good.
Pretty efficient, huh?
I understand that Baylor won comfortably, and I know that Finn did win a conference title in Toledo. I never thought he was a great passer, and he threw 2 picks against Tarleton State. That's probably not a good sign.
No.
I think Utah defensively, we know, is going to be a very good team. This is going to be a playoff team as far as I'm concerned. Give me Utah at home. We know how good they are in their home stadium. They never, basically ever lose there. But I think for this matchup, Finn throwing 2 picks against Tarleton State is a serious red flag for me, and I think he's going to be in a world of hurt here. So I'm going to go with Utah. Turnovers might play a factor. Rising looked good, though. I mean, he was 10 of 15, but he had 5 touchdowns, so I don't think it really matters. Give me Utah. I think the Utes run it up.
Yeah, and he threw for 254.
Yeah. A lot of big plays there. 25-plus yards per completion.
I was going to say that. I mean, 18 per attempt or somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
that's
pretty good.
That's ridiculous. This is a Utah team that a lot of people would kind of went, well, what the hell's wrong with this team last year? Well, I'll tell you what was wrong, Scott. They were missing Cam Rising for most of it, and they were missing their all-star tight end, Brant Keithy. Both those guys are back. Like you mentioned, Rising had a great game. Keithy got 4 passes, 69 yards, 3 touchdowns. So I think we can consider him back as well. And this is a Baylor Bears defense. For all the offensive struggles they've had, this defense is terrible, man. At least they were last year. They were 130th in EPA per play, 119th success rate, and 122nd in explosiveness. None of those numbers are good. They bring back 9 starters, Scott, but it goes back to the old theory. If you've got a shitty defense and you bring back most of it, what do you really have? You just have shitty defense a year older.
Experienced shitty defense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think this defense needs to take a huge step forward to compete with Utah. I don't think they do it. The other factor in this game, Scott, Utah rested a bunch of guys for about most of the second half against Southern Utah because they just absolutely blasted them. And as you touched on, they are practically unbeatable at home. They won 19 of their last 20 at home. And as the favorite under Whittingham, 4-1-1 ATS, their last 6 games when laying the points. I see nothing to point to Baylor here. Yeah, I'd love to get it below 14, but I don't think it matters. Give me, did you say the Utes? Minus 14.5.
Over under 1.5 4th and short attempts by Aranda and Baylor in this game. On their own 50. Over under 1.5. I'm going over 2. That's the problem with Baylor. I mean, you love the aggressiveness, but if one thing goes wrong, Utah's taking over at the 35. And that's probably a free touchdown.
Shout out Kevin Kelly.
So there you go. I miss that Presbyterian team.
Oh,
the good days, man.
Over under on times we're gonna lament Presbyterian.
That was so fun though. FCS lines of like, oh, what's the total? 60? Yeah, sure, why not?
Oh yeah, man. You'd get those games up on ESPN Plus. It sounded like a high school crew doing the play-by-play.
4th and 19 at their own 10. They're gonna go for it.
Let's go.
All right.
Let's go.
All right, it's fine.
All right, Scott. We talked about them earlier. This is the Ole Miss Rebels, 6th ranked in the country at home, laying 42 and a hook to Middle Tennessee State. We got nothing on this.
I was looking for the banner. I couldn't find it.
All right, that's fair. Got the Blue Raiders. They struggled to beat Tennessee Tech last week. That's not a good sign. They
probably should have lost the game, to be honest.
Yeah, they got a TD with 30 seconds left. They had 328 yards of total offense. Pretty pedestrian. Meanwhile, speaking of running up the score, yeah, they did. The Ole Miss Rebels looked unbeatable, and they beat an FCS team in Furman 76-0, Scott.
I remember you said you thought Furman was actually going to be a pretty high-ranked team in the FCS.
I will 100% cop to that. I thought the same thing as I was watching that score just go up like a pinball machine. That was a terrible take on the Furman. Is that the Paladins, right?
Yeah, Paladins.
Yeah, not good. Check out some of these video game numbers, Scott. Ole Miss 772 total offense, 37 first downs. They only had the ball half the time, so it's not like they had a huge advantage in time of possession.
It wasn't because of punts. They just scored in 2 plays every time.
Right. Jackson Dart had a massive day, 418, 5 TDs. 4 players had 70 yards or more receiving. As far as Middle Tennessee State, the Raiders last week allowed someone named Jordan Potts to throw for 256 and 3 TDs and no picks. As we mentioned, Jackson Dart, 418, 5 TDs. I hate laying these big numbers, but you know what? Ole Miss, you burned me last week. You ain't burning me again. Give me Ole Miss minus gulp, 42.5.
I think I have to agree. They have a road game against Wake Forest, so not a big look-ahead spot, if any, but the point is I'm going to mention it. I think Ole Miss kills them. Middle Tennessee State, once again, scored a touchdown in the last minute to actually beat Tennessee Tech. And that game was up by, I believe they were up by 16 at half. And they were up 21-0. They blew a 21-point lead, which is pretty funny. They were actually down because Tennessee Tech ended up going up by 1. So it wasn't even a tie game. They got a 2-point conversion at the end to make it 7. I got to take Ole Miss. I mean, if you give up 25 points and 3 touchdowns to Potts, Dart's going to kill you. Like, Dart really might go for like 350 and 5 in this game.
Yeah,
I got to go Ole Miss here. If I'm going to talk about the running up the score because Lane Kiffin doesn't care about the feelings of other teams, I don't see that changing here. I think Ole Miss can name the score. I'm going to win by 50. Give me Ole Miss to win this game. Do I think they get 60 points? You know what? We'll go 58 to. We'll go 58 to. Yeah, I was gonna say 58-7.
Okay. All right. I think we're in the same ballpark here. Robbie Show Productions says that Ole Miss game last week will be LSU Nicholls State.
They better bounce back after that loss.
Oh man, yeah, I think he's absolutely right. Okay. How about another? Can I interest you in another 40+ point spread, Skeeter?
Sure.
Florida A&M. The what? What are they?
Oh damn it. Are they the Rattlers?
Or Rattlers. Nicely done. Nicely done. Travel down to South Beach, take on the Hurricanes. Hurricanes 44.5. And perhaps my favorite two numbers of the week, 44.5 point favorites. The total, Scott, 55.5.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of playing this mini game of do we have a banner for this game? And right now we do not. So that's kind of the experiment I'm going on. But for this matchup, I mean, we know Miami is the much better team. Miami, I'll tell you what, to win the conference, I know we were both on it. That looked really good in week 1. So we'll see what happens here. But you have to at least acknowledge the fact that Miami does have Ball State on deck. So no look-ahead spot for them. Because anytime you talk about these matchups against FCS teams, you have to ask if there's a look-ahead spot.
Right.
Now, Florida A&M ended up beating South Carolina State by 4. They beat Norfolk by 1, so they are 2-0. Good for them. Shout out to Richardson, by the way. I believe the Central Michigan went to FAU last year, wasn't very good, and he went to Florida A&M. So former FBS quarterback there for them. I mean, if Miami wants to win by 50, they'll win by 50. Do I think they'll care enough? You know what? I'm going to say no. I'll take a stand here. Give me the points. Why not? Miami beat Florida. Maybe they'll be hungover, both literally and figuratively. I don't know. They won their rivalry game. I just wonder if psychologically they're going to care. I'm not sure they're going to. I'll take the points. A&M's played 2 games. That's twice as many games that Miami's played. The chemistry there is flawless. You give me A&M. Yeah, why not? I just think Miami, if they cover this, I wouldn't be shocked. But I wonder if there's going to be a letdown after killing your rival in Florida. Maybe they have a letdown there. Maybe.
I think they do, Scott. I'm going to agree with you on this. Like you mentioned, Florida A&M 2-0. They are the reigning HBCU champion, Scott, for what that's worth.
Yeah.
And they're also ranked number 24 in the FCS coaches poll. And as we learned last week, if you're ranked in the FCS poll, you've got a great shot against these FBS teams.
Unless your name's Furman.
But yeah, we don't have to go. Miami just absolutely dominated this Florida team. 529 in total offense, 144 on the ground, 385 in the air.
What do you say the line was again?
44.5.
Yeah, sure. I'll take the points. They'll win by 40.
Yep, we're catching a good number here. I think Miami is going to have just enough of a letdown after that big win over Florida. And the Rattlers sneak in through the back door in the second half as Miami rests their starters for sure.
The only counterpoint would be it's the first home game of the season, if they really care. But it's supposed to be bad weather, by the way. It's supposed to be some lightning storms, so maybe there might be a delay. But bad weather, why not? I'll go with the under, and I'll go with the dog.
Okay, that's good. We got a card for South Florida, Alabama?
Yes, we do.
Woohoo! What you got?
Yeah.
Yep, that's what I got as well.
There you go.
This is a South Florida Bulls, Alabama Crimson Tide. 30.5 is the number, 63.5 is the total. You know what, Scott? Last year, the South Florida team gave Crimson Tide all they could handle. Lost 17-3.
They didn't score, but defensively they looked pretty good.
Yeah, well, and it was another bad weather game down there at Raymond James. Bama, they beat the hell out of Western Kentucky. Another one that I got wrong. I thought Western Kentucky would have a little something for them. They had
I just like the over. That got
nothing for them. Yes, that's right. I think we were both on the over there, weren't we?
We like the over. I know you mentioned the points, and I'm just like, there's a couple ways to get there. Bama might score 60, and they did.
Yeah, and they did, and they got there all by themselves, which we couldn't quite get out of Texas, by the way, but we were close. Milroe was fantastic, averaged 9.2 yards per play. 600 yards overall, 65 snaps. That's just incredible. But Scott, you talk about a look ahead. We may have one here. We've got, well, certainly the biggest one we've had in a while, as they have Wisconsin next week before they actually head and take on Georgia.
They were terrified watching that Western Michigan film in week 1. Bama's terrified now. They'll beat Wisconsin by 20.
Absolutely. The Bulls, you know what? They had a nice 23 season after going 1-11 in 2022. 7 wins last year, and they've took care of Bethune-Cookman last week, 48-3. I like this. I like this Bulls offense. They've got a good dual threat guy in Byron Brown. He had 800 plus yards rushing last season, but at the end of the day, I think we maybe have just too tall of a number here. Again, I don't know that's going to be 17-3 again, but I think South Florida keeps it close enough. I'll take the Bulls plus 30.5.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also wondering if Bama's going to be motivated to bury this team after last year's meeting was close. That's kind of the concern that I have. There might be some returning starters, Milroe especially, might be pissed.
I think a new coach helps temper that a little bit.
New coach might help. It's amazing what happens when Jeff Scott's no longer employed. Your team actually looks decent. But I think for the sake of this matchup, I kind of like the over again. I think South Florida can score. Now, Brown did nothing, at least through the air against Bethune-Cookman. It didn't matter. They ended up having 231 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, so they didn't really need to throw the ball. Bethune-Cookman was cooked in that game. But still, I'm going to go with the over in this one. I think Bama can score 50 again. We know that they're going to generate big plays. We know Milroe can use his legs. A lot of talented receivers there. A lot of fast guys out wide. You might get some big fireworks and overall just quick scores in this game. I think that South Florida can score. I know Bama's defense was good, giving up no points. Western Kentucky did miss a couple field goals, and they also went for it a couple times inside the 10, 20-yard line, and they failed those conversions. I thought Western Kentucky actually moved the ball. They just had a hard time of actually finishing off drives. I can see South Florida scoring a couple touchdowns here. I think they could get to maybe even 20. I'll go with the over, though. I thought Bama's offense will look good. I think that South Florida's defense might struggle to keep up with them, but it's mostly just based on Bama having enough motivation to potentially run up the score on this team where they might keep some guys in for the fourth quarter. I'm going to go with the over here. It worked for the first week. I'll take it again for the second week.
Well, and I think by extension, Scott, if you've taken the over 63.5, you're almost going to have to lay the.
I think I am leaning Bama, but I think I'm also going to go with the over.
Okay. Yeah, I know
you mentioned new coach, but I think there were guys on that roster that are like, how the hell we only score 20 against this team last year, or 17? Right. Yeah. I think they're going to try to make a statement, in my opinion.
All right. Scott, let's talk about KU. Ranked number 19th in the country. They go on the road to take on the Illinois Fighting Illini. I've got this at 57.5, and it's come down a point. I had it at 5.5. It's now 4.5. I think it's you, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
I don't know if it really matters, to be honest.
Well, it's a snake. Whoever closes opens. So you close last, and you're opening.
I'll go Illinois money line.
Okay.
I got to pick an upset. So I got to pick an upset somewhere. I like Kansas, of course. I like him a lot with Daniels. He was really nothing special in the first game. Went 9 of 15 for 148. Didn't matter though, because Lindenwood. I didn't know they had a program, let alone an actual FBS school. I didn't know they had a football program. Mm-hmm. That game was over at half. It was 34-0. Then Kansas didn't care. But I guess the question with Daniels though is he really hasn't played much football for the last couple months. Got injured early last year, and then he played for basically a half against Lindenwood. I thought Illinois looked good. I mean, they both played FCS teams. They both won comfortably, but I think you make an argument that Illinois, especially at home, is a dangerous team, and Altmaier was really good in the first game. But I need to see a bit more from Daniels because I feel like he's the main X factor and just the main overall talking point for the upcoming season for Kansas, which is why we had a disagreement about their overall season projection. You had faith in them staying healthy. I didn't. But I think for the sake of this matchup, 4.5 on the road with Kansas, I think I'd rather take Illinois at home. They're always dangerous at home, and I feel like this is a spot where the line's pretty short. It's been dropping. This does have that upset feel to it for me, but I see a close game no matter what. Give me Illinois money line or what I think is going to be a pretty close one-possession game late.
Okay, that's fair. Both of these teams had no trouble last week. Kansas beat Lindenwood 48-3. Illinois beat Eastern Illinois 45-0, and we learned nothing really. I'll tell you what we did. We did learn, and as you mentioned, Luke Altmaier, not a bad quarterback. Scott, this is an Illinois team that just kind of we're used to seeing just grind you to dust, just run the ball, and then step up on defense.
Then Chase Brown left, and they had to actually throw the ball.
Yeah, and that's Altmaier 19-24, 213, 4 touchdowns. I think what's going to happen here is I think we're going to see a lot of offense on each side. I don't love either one of these defensive teams. I think there's going to be ample opportunity to score some points. I don't hate your upset pick, but I'll tell you what I like better, and that's the over 57.5. I'll take that.
All I know is that if we're fading both defenses, but I get to get plus money fading Kansas's defense on the road, that does sound quite appealing to me.
It's a hard argument to ignore. Absolutely. Let's take a look at Buffalo and ZOU, the Missouri Tigers, as they are at home there in Columbia once again, laying 34 and the hook. 52.5 is the number. Does that match up what we have there? Yes, it does. Oh, you got down to 51.5. All right then.
I just have whatever the banners tell me.
No, I know. I want to keep it consistent with what I'm saying and what we're actually seeing there in front of us. This is a Bulls team that looked really good against the Lafayette. Scott, I'll be really impressed.
I would never have guessed the Leopards, but looked it up.
Okay, yeah, it's the Lafayette Leopards.
I was pulling up the box score when you were asking me, so I already had it loaded. Sorry.
Yeah, I had no idea. I did not know that either. I'm going to be total disclosure. By the way, this is not Louisiana Lafayette. This is Lafayette.
This is not the Réjean Cajuns. No, this is the Leopards.
They've got this is a Buffalo team that's got Mizzou kind of sandwiched. It's like the worst sandwich in the world because they've got UMass and Illinois and Northern Illinois coming up in the next 2 games. This is a Bulls team that likes to run the ball. They were able to put up 208 against the Leopards.
Not a great yards per carry average, but good enough, I guess.
No.
4.5.
Barksdale went for 99. Ogbonna went for 195, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But, Scott, I was most impressed, and we talked about it last week. What I was worried about was this Missouri team replacing a lot of pieces on defense. It did not matter one bit. They gave up 85 yards, Scott. I had a play on this game for my video. I had the UT Martin team total over 7.5 at plus 180.
I'm not sure they crossed midfield.
One time. I looked it up. I looked at the drive chart. They got to the 47 of Mizzou late in the fourth quarter.
Although he said UT Martin, I think he meant Murray State.
Or Murray State, rather. Sorry. Yes, absolutely.
Same difference, whatever.
I don't see how Buffalo gets anything going on offense against this Missouri team at all. Mizzou, they are accustomed to laying big numbers, and they're accustomed to covering them, Skeeter. 7-4 ATS in their last 11 when they're given 30 or better. I think this fits right in there. Again, we're catching a favorable hook down from 35 to 34.5. Hard to win. It's hard to cover if you don't score. I don't think Buffalo gets to 7 in this one. I think Mizzou wins going away.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Buffalo, I thought, was fine in the first game. They were up 16-0 at half, so defensively they were fine. Offensively, I thought they were okay. I mean, they weren't amazing. Ogbonna was 14 of 24. I just feel like the completion percentage wasn't there. They had a couple turnovers that they forced against Denobile, or Denoble, however you want to pronounce it. Point is, though, I thought they were fine against Lafayette. They weren't exactly, lighting it up. And we know Buffalo, remember when they used to be the class of the MAC? Good times. Feels like it was a long time ago. Point is, though, Missouri's Boston College on deck, so not exactly the biggest look-at spot, but you could argue it is. But 34.5 I like. I think Missouri wins by at least 35.
Yep.
I think Missouri to win this game, I'm trying to think, 45-10.
I think that sounds right. I think Buffalo's going to have to get a break to score a touchdown. I think they're going to have to get a deep turnover, pick six, or pick something like that. I don't think they're driving down the field 80 yards to score against this Mizzou defense. I really don't. All righty, let's talk about Nicholls State heading to Baton Rouge to take on the LSU Tigers. 48.5 is the number. We got a slide on this one. Oh, there it is. No, we don't have it.
No, we don't.
48.5, 58.5, Scott. Man, and you look at some of these spreads and totals, it is just unbelievable. They are counting on the underdogs to do absolutely nothing as far as the defense goes. So what do you have here, my friend?
I mean, I'll give Nicholls some props. They hung in there against the BS team in week 1. They ended up losing to Louisiana Tech, but it was a 1-possession game. So there's that. Now, part of it was a free interception return for a touchdown on one of the worst throws I've seen in the entire week. But the point is the offense didn't really do anything. They got a free touchdown courtesy of the defense, but McQuaid was really underwhelming at quarterback for Nicholls. 10 of 26 for 138. Like that's pretty rough. It wasn't as bad as the New Mexico State quarterback. Damn, that was awful. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's a stat line you might want to look into.
Oh
Point
no, I
is,
didn't see it. But
it was rough, but they ended up winning that game anyway. I'm going to take LSU. If you're trying to look for a spot where it's a get-right spot where you can kind of get some actual momentum back and trying to just take some anger out, they do play South Carolina on the road next week. South Carolina's not any good. I think we'd agree on that. I just think after losing to USC in a game they could have won, this might get really, really ugly. And see LSU trying to run it up on them. Played Grambling last year. They won 72-10. Played Southern the year before that, 65-17. I think I got to take LSU here. It's off a loss. They'll be pissed. I do want to point out, though, that Emory did tear his ACL, so there is a bit of a running back issue now with LSU.
Mhm.
So we'll see what happens. But I like the over. I kind of love the overs for LSU team total. They might score 60 in this game. I mentioned a couple scores there with them going over. I don't see them taking their foot off the gas. So I see LSU scoring 60 and change. It's first home game of the year, too. LSU team total over, and I'll take the spread.
Yeah, as you've mentioned, we've seen this pattern before. LSU not learning their lesson by scheduling a tough game right out of the box. They've done it against Florida State the last 2 years and lost both of them. And like you said, Scott, the get well game after those two Florida State losses, 72 against Grambling, 65 against Southern. I put this Nicholls State team right in that same category. I've got to lay the points here as well. And again, once you're laying that many points, you might as well take the over because they're pretty much both going to have to hit. I mean, you could certainly thread the needle, but the likely outcome if you're covering 48.5 is it's going over 58.5. Nice little single game parlay opportunity there. So I'll take the Tigers laying that massive number.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers as well. How about Western Michigan against Ohio State? Man, the Broncos must be making all the money, Scott, as they're playing their second Big Ten team in a row. Ohio State laying 37.5, 53.5 is the number. And now it's down to set 37 and 54 as we see it right there. Mr. Reichel, how did the Broncos hang around with your Wisconsin Badgers as long as they did? Well, I'll tell you what, the defensive line was able to do their job against the Badgers ground game. Secondary did okay, didn't give up a ton of big plays, and their passing game was able to hit a few big ones and enough mid-ranges to keep things moving right along. This is an Ohio State team, Scott, that they kind of played with their food a little bit against Akron. I've told you before, I'm not sold on Will Howard being an elite quarterback. I think he's a slightly better than average power 4 QB. I'm not sure he's much better than that. Again, we got to take some dogs here. I think this is the opportunity for me. Ohio State plays with their food just long enough. Give me the Broncos plus 37.
Yeah, I don't know how good Wisconsin actually is. I don't think they're very good. And now I live bet Wisconsin, so shout out to them. They ended up covering for me. But Western Michigan, they're going to run the ball. They're going to drain a bunch of clock. Wolf is not any good. 12 of 18 for 141 interception. He had no touchdowns. So I know the passing game is not going to be a threat. I mean, you mentioned that Ohio State played with their food. I wouldn't even go that far. They couldn't even run. They just couldn't run the damn ball.
Yeah.
I mean, it was now the game went. Ohio State ended up with an okay rushing performance at 170. 5.2 yards per carry. They did nothing in the entire first half running the ball. They just couldn't bother. So I think Ohio State, unlike Wisconsin, will just spread them out and just bombs away at that point. I think Ohio State kills them, to be honest. I think Ohio State, even though they won the game by 46, do I think Chip Kelly and company are happy with how they played? Not really. I think they could have played better. They got Marshall on deck, so there's no look ahead. I really think Wisconsin's just not very good. I think Ohio State is going to come out. The defense might score a couple times. If they stuff the run, I don't think Wolf's going to do anything through the air. So I could think Ohio State could score 45 and maybe still cover this line in theory. But I think they're going to score 50. Give me the over in this game, and I'll go with Ohio State to cover. We're going to disagree, but I do think despite winning by 46, there's a lot for Chip Kelly to be pissed about with this offense because they did not play well at all offensively for most of this game. The defense, though, was great. Give me the Ohio State Buckeyes. Maybe pitch a shutout here. but I'll go with the spread and the over.
All right, very good. Another matchup of top 25 teams, Scott, is Tennessee travels to Charlotte in a neutral site game to take on NC State. NC State ranked 24th. Tennessee 9.5 point, 9.5 point, not 29.5, 9.5 point road favorites. 60.5 is the number. What do you have on this one?
Points here. I hate laying points on the road between two ranked teams. Tennessee looks really, really good. Now, they played a crappy team, but they still were able to dominate. NC State almost lost to Western Carolina. I didn't think McCall looked that great. I know his stats at the end were fine, but I don't think he's that accurate, or at least accurate enough to actually, constantly succeed against talented defenses. Tennessee's defense might not be, the best in the world, but they have a lot of talent, a lot of 4- or 5-star recruits. So I'll go with Tennessee. I think the pace is going to be a serious problem for NC State to handle because I don't know how you prep for it. I don't know what you're supposed to do to prep for the pace that they play at. And you're looking at them struggling defensively against Western Carolina. Probably not a great sign. I think Tennessee might run it up on them. Give me Tennessee minus 9.5.
Mm-hmm. I'm absolutely with you. I'm looking at this Western Carolina game where they were down 21-17 in the fourth quarter. Not a good look. The other thing that I'm looking at, Scott, is NC State couldn't contain the run at all. So I think Tennessee is going to be able to have some success on the ground. Quick quiz for you, Scott. Jaden Daniels broke the passing efficiency record last year for FBS schools. You know whose record he broke?
For efficiency, I'll go with Zappy.
Grayson McCall. McCall, buddy.
Okay.
And like I said, he ended up with decent numbers, 26-40. But yeah, he didn't look great. He missed a lot of throws and just not putting up much momentum. And he's going up against one of the nation's best front sevens. They've got a massive pass rush. They've got James Pierce, probably a top 10 draft pick. He had 10 sacks last year, and they have a lot of depth there. I think they're going to be able to flush him out of the pocket. And for all the talk we hear about Tennessee and their massive air attack, they put up 300 yards rushing last season. Our last game averaged 6.6 yards per carry. I think the Vols will be able to do what they want, Scott. I think they can run the ball. I think they can throw the ball. And I think that defense is going to harass Grayson McCall all year, all game long. Man, we had him as a top 10 quarterback 2 years ago, and that ain't going to happen. His fall from grace, if you will, I think continues. Give me the Vols. And it's either a road game for both teams or it's not a true road game, however you want to look at it, because it is a neutral site game. I'm hanging my hat on that. I'll take that extra hook as well. I'll give you Tennessee minus 9.5. How about Houston versus Oklahoma? Oklahoma 27.5 point favorites. 49.5 is the number. Oh, that's now gone to 28. Hate that move.
Did you watch any of that Houston game?
No. They
were absolutely horrible.
It looked like it. I saw the box.
Smith was one of the worst quarterbacks I've seen for the entire weekend. And I'm only talking about FBS quarterbacks. I'm not throwing in like the FCS guys who get their asses kicked. Right. Smith was awful. UNLV killed them the entire game. It was rough. So, that's my thoughts. I didn't think Oklahoma looked that good either. But they covered because Temple sucks. And they turned the ball over 6 times. I thought Arnold wasn't that great. But I guess the question that I have for you is, if Smith is going to be that bad and you have Oklahoma at home, can they just like accidentally stumble into winning this game by 30? Because I think they can. I thought Houston was that bad.
100%. 100%, Scott. This is a Houston team. They didn't score until the last minute of the game.
To be honest, I didn't know they scored.
They were 2 for 15 on third downs, 1 of 3 on fourth downs. They were down 7-0 after the first quarter, 14-0 at halftime, 24-0 after 3 quarters. They showed absolutely nothing.
And they benched Smith. They benched him. They brought on the backup.
And Scott, Houston has just a minor problem. They can't run and they can't throw. They ran the ball 26 times for 38 yards against UNLV, baby. That's less than 1.5 yards per carry. Even though we don't have the friendly hook anymore and it's gone to 28, I just don't see any other way this one ends except with a big Oklahoma win.
Watching Houston play that first game, if Smith is their quarterback and they're going to keep whatever they're doing right now, of course they also have a new head coach, so it's going to take a year or two for Fritz to get his guys in. Right. This team might win like 3-4 games. I thought they were that bad watching them in week 1.
Yep, absolutely.
Weren't they at home in that game too?
I thought they were. I thought that was a home game. Might have been neutral, but I thought it was a home game for
No,
Houston.
they were. I think they were at home.
Ugh,
They had
scary.
no points for basically the entire game at home. UNLV. That is rough.
Ugly. Ugly, ugly. How about App State and Clemson as App State goes on the road to take on the Tigers off that disappointing loss last week to Georgia. 17-point favorites is what the Tigers are. 52.5 is the number. Let me double check that. Yeah, there you go. My numbers actually matched. Man, I know this Georgia team is really good, Scott, but this is a Clemson team that didn't score an offensive touchdown last week, and that is not good. App State took care of business as they were supposed to. They had a 17-0 lead against East Tennessee State. They let them get to close within 17-10, and then they scored the final 3 touchdowns to take care of that. App State rolled up 500 yards of total offense. And we talked about this is a Clemson team that hung around mainly due to their defense in the first half, down just 6-0 at halftime. Klubnik, 18 of 29 for 142, threw a pick, no touchdowns, of course. It's a tough one for me, buddy. It really is. I think Clemson wants to bounce back in a big way, but this is an App State team that's not going to roll over for anyone. I think 17 is a little bit too tall. I'll take the Mountaineers to lose by 14.
I'm taking the points too. It's mostly Dabo's just stubbornness to not use the damn transfer portal. I don't think this team's that good.
No?
Like defensively, I know that they're supposed to be a very good unit, and they looked like it for a half. I think Klubnik stinks. Like I've gone on record saying this.
We talked about that. We talked about that. Neither one of us liked him.
That's why I liked Georgia in the first game. I just thought Klubnik wasn't going to score, and what do you know? They didn't score a touchdown the entire game. So I'll go with App State. Clemson at home, of course, is a dangerous place to play, but Clemson can't really light it up offensively. I have a hard time laying multiple possessions, 3 possessions, with a team that you feel good about when they reach 35. They have a parade when they score 35 points with this team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't back it. I think App State offensively, they're viewed as being the favorite in their conference. They have the better quarterback. I think Aguilar's better than Klubnik. Do we agree on that?
You certainly make
it's close.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you threw Klubnik into like the Mountain West or like you'd be like, all right, yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah,
sounds good to me. I think Aguilar's good enough. Like I'll take the points. I think they can hang in there.
All right. We're on the same page there, and let's talk about a Mountain West team going up against a high quality opponent. As Boise State travels to Oregon to take on the Quackers. Oregon is ranked 7th in the country, and they're an 18.5-point favorite. 60.5 is the number, and now it's gone to 19, and the total's gone to 61.5. So let's use those as our official numbers. What do you have for this one, buddy?
So Boise State had the best performance by anybody in week 1. Shout out to Genty, who is an absolute monster, who I'm sure most of you should know. If you don't, now you know him. Guy's ridiculous. Do you want to read off his stats?
I don't have them. Give them to me. I know he was massive.
Yeah, massive's honestly an understatement. It's one of the best running back performances I've probably seen since, I don't know, Jared Patterson that one game where he had like 6 or 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
For the first game, Genty had 20 carries for 267 yards.
260,
that's right. 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
6. The problem was they couldn't stop the pass, and they gave up 45 points to Georgia Southern. Over. Give me over in this game. Oregon had a hard time scoring in the first game against Idaho, yet paradoxically, Gabriel's numbers were really, really good. Like, I don't know why they only won that game by 10. Gabriel was 51 of 49 for 380 yards and 2 touchdowns. How the hell do they only score 24 points? Like, I got to go with the over. Georgia Southern threw the ball all across the field, and Boise had no answers. Oregon might score 50. Like, this Boise State defense was problematic, to say the least, in the first game, and they won because Genty's a lunatic. I'm going with the over, and I think I'm going Oregon because they might be extra incentivized after whatever that was in week 1 to actually get in the damn end zone, maybe north of 7 times in this game. Give me the over. I see a bunch of points.
Well, Scott, I got to tell you, I made a lot of bad calls last week. I backed a lot of FCS teams that I thought were going to be much better than they were, and they ended up getting absolutely run out of the building. But the worst call I could have made in all of last week, Scott, was taking that Boise State Georgia Southern under, as one team beat the total by themselves and the other one almost did. So I'm fine with your over right there. But I think the Ducks can actually get it done. They weren't efficient, like you said. They had 380 yards passing from Gabriel, 41 of 49. Those are just ridiculous numbers, and especially when you put up 24 points. But this is the Ducks defense that really was on point, Scott. They forced 7 punts, 2 interceptions, and a turnover on downs. I don't think Boise State is going to have the same offensive success that they had last game. I'll take the Ducks to snap back, so to speak, and cover the 19 points.
Yeah, I do want to ask you, though, just asking about Boise. What's the takeaway there? Because Genty's great. I mean, Maddox didn't really have to do much. I'm assuming we don't like Maddox's chances against Oregon in Eugene.
No.
I don't either.
My takeaway from Boise is they're going to be probably a pretty good over team.
Yeah, that's my takeaway too.
Although we'll see if people can keep Genty to, mortal numbers, averaging 5.5 yards a carry on 25 carries or something like that. I don't
know if Maddox can beat these teams.
Yeah, that's the problem for sure. So, all right, let's talk about a team that had a really nice performance in week 1 or 3 quarters, whatever the hell it was last week. USC, they're at home against a Utah State. I'm sorry, did you say Utah State?
USC, that's pushing it a bit, but all right, fair enough.
Ranked 13th in the country. Utah State is getting 28.5 from the Trojans. 63.5 is your number. Scott, you want to talk about a sandwich spot? Here you go. How about Utah State in between LSU and Michigan? Man, if
that's a road Michigan game, by the way.
It is a road Michigan game headed to the big house for sure. This is a USC defense I think stunned the world, Scott. They held LSU to 20 points. And everybody thought LSU was going to go crazy. They did not. This Utah State team, man, they were hit hard in the portal. They lost 2 quarterbacks who started a game a year ago. They lost 3 of their best defensive returners after the spring practice. And they brought in Spencer Petras from Iowa. Man, you talk about instant offense. There you go. But don't worry, Scott. He got hurt in the opener. And he was seen in a walking boot, so he's probably not playing. They are basically down to their 4th string quarterback, Bryson Barnes. He is a transfer.
You remember him? He was the guy who was shoved into the Utah starting lineup.
Yep. He's a pig farmer extraordinaire. If you remember that little backstory on him, 12 touchdowns and 11 interceptions for Utah. But the good news continues for Utah State. As they brought in running back Robert Briggs. He broke his leg after a 55-yard run. So kind of good news.
And not for good luck.
No, break a leg, no. I think Miller Moss and this USC offense, they're going to be able to call their shot. This is a Utah State defense that wasn't good last year, and I don't think it's gotten much better this year. Utah State they got nobody to play quarterback, man. And whoever's playing quarterback is going to get beat up because they gave up 44 sacks last year, Scott. I think this USC defense continues to show why they've improved. Yes, I know this is a classic sandwich, classic look-ahead spot. I don't care. Utah State is just that bad. I'll lay the 28.5.
Yeah, I'll just play it safe. Give me the in this game. USC's defense, I thought, was once again good, which was kind of shocking. But offensively, you thought they'd light it up a bit more. So you can make the same argument because I thought that you're looking at how USC played, and offensively they were fine. I thought they couldn't really run the ball. They kept trying to. They didn't get anything out of it, but they kept trying to run the ball. And they'll have more success doing that this time. But I think Moss was really good. I thought he got in that game. He was getting hit quite often in that matchup. So I think they might pull him early because I thought he got banged up, didn't he? Didn't he hurt his finger at some point earlier in the game?
Yep.
So he was kind of taking a beating. He was still good, though. I mean, he had 378 yards and a touchdown, but they averaged 3 yards a carry. They couldn't run the ball. So I think that they're going to try to run the ball. But with Michigan on deck, I could see an incentive to pull some guys once it gets out of reach. We mentioned Utah State has no quarterback. 63.5 with a team that has no quarterback? It's a pretty high total. Give me the under on that one. I mean, USC could score 49. You still go under.
Yep, by a lot.
I'll go with the under in this game.
All right, very good. Okay, that wraps up the top 25, Scott. 75 minutes, not bad, not bad. And now there's only one thing left to talk about, Scott. You know, we're doing this show. People ask us, they say, well, you know, you guys break down all the games. You know a lot about college football. If you had to bet everything, Scott, if you had to take it all and put it on one single game, what would that game be? And folks, we're here for you. We're going to let you know. As Scott and I, we're going to talk about this week's selection for Bet the Farm. Oops, missed my cue. All right, buddy. We're still not quite in mid-season form, but there it is. We brought back the hats, and we promised we wouldn't bring back the hats until we lost, Scott. And we did lose with Arkansas State last week. Scott, why did we lose?
They led by 17 in the fourth quarter, and they blew a 17-point lead to an FCS team at home.
Ridiculous. Absolutely.
They somehow won the game. The conference announced afterwards they didn't actually win the game, but they didn't take the win back. So I don't know what that even means. But yeah, Arkansas State was up 17. It's a spot you want to be in, obviously. I think the line closed at 12.5, and it didn't get there. So
yep, we looked like geniuses last week for 3 quarters, but couldn't close, couldn't bring it home. But you know what? We're bouncing back today in this one, Scott. Tell us about the farm.
So for the farm, we're going to go to a matchup between Washington State and Texas Tech. 2 teams that scored a bunch of points and didn't really guard anybody in the first game. But we are going to go with the home team here. We're going to go with Washington State minus the 1.5. Don't mind the over in this game too, but I think Washington State at home is always dangerous in Pullman. You're looking at Texas Tech, who probably should have lost to Abilene Christian.
Yeah.
Abilene Christian had, I think it was like 2nd and 1 at the 4-yard line in the last minute, and they settled for a field goal. But they could have taken the lead in the last minute. A lot of points being involved in that game. Abilene Christian went for 2 for the win and called the most generic QB draw 5 wide I've ever seen. But they gave up 51 points to an FCS team. Probably not a good sign for Tech. Now, Washington State did give up about 30 to Portland State. They also scored 70. So the offense is definitely, let's just say, on point. Tech for the last couple of years has been good at home and really bad on the road. So they've traveled poorly for the last couple of years. But in Pullman, we know that Washington State's dangerous. Offensively, they're very good. And I just think Texas Tech's defense is the worst unit compared to Washington State's defense. Give us the Cougars at home minus 1.5.
Yeah, giving up 51, even in overtime to Abilene Christian.
That's
By the
still
way,
45 in regulation.
Huh?
That's still 45 in regulation.
Yeah, so I was going to say it was only one series in overtime, and like you said, ACU went for the win, and terrible play call, and Texas Tech had a defense right, but they came up basically a yard short of a huge upset down there in Lubbock. I like this Washington State team at home. I think they're going to be another over team, Scott. They're going to score some points, and they're going to forget all about the defense. But I think the better play here is Washington State laying 1.5, and that's what's going to be the farm play. And we're going to be back next week to tell you about how badly how much we won that one by, how badly they got beat. So we're excited.
Yep, looking forward to that game in general, because if you like points, you might want the over as well.
Yep, absolutely correct. Hey, we're getting more viewers every week, buddy. We're getting more live viewers to stop in. So for everybody that was there, thanks very much for stopping in. And yeah, absolutely,
ma'am.
Next time, don't forget to drop us a comment, because we're reading them live. We'll get to your comment and we'll talk about it live. So don't be shy. We'll talk to you in real time. And tell your friends, tell your enemies. We don't tell everybody you know that we're going to be doing this.
Hey, people that you are neutral with, you can tell them too if you want.
Just like your family. Maybe you don't care one way or the other. But yeah, we're going to be here every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time. Break down the top 25, and settle in. We're having a blast doing back to school. It's good to be back, and we'll do it next week. So for all the team over here at Whiners and Whiners.com, for myself, Scott Steehn, for my buddy Scott Reichel, you guys have a terrific weekend. We got the NFL starting. We got 2 full days chocked full of football fun. I can't wait. Plus a Friday night game in Brazil. Scott, you excited about that?
Yeah, should be at least competitive. Spread's close, so it's probably not going to top the game we saw yesterday, but hopefully it's competitive.
I totally agree. So that'll be fun weekend. You guys take care. Good luck on all your plays, and we will see you next time on Scott Squared, Back to School. See you then, guys. Take care.